What we're witnessing right now isn't just another wave of technology. It's something that could completely reshape the institutions we've relied on for decades, especially when it comes to finance. AI doesn't just improve systems. It has the power to replace them. For years, I've been trying to get people to pause, to think, to slow this down, just enough to understand it. Not stop it, that's impossible, but at least regulate it before it gets out of control. And I didn't say this once. I've been saying it over and over again. Because once this reaches a certain point, there's no going back. Now, if you're new here, you probably have no idea who I am, and that's fine. My name is Alex Carter. I'm the founder of a digital acquisition company, and I've spent years studying how systems grow, scale, and collapse. And what I'm seeing with AI right now follows a pattern I've seen before. But this time, the stakes are much higher. On November 30th, 2022, something happened that most people still underestimate. The world didn't just evolve, it shifted. That was the day artificial intelligence became accessible to the public, for free, through a tool now known as ChatGPT, a system built on what's called a generative pre-trained transformer. But in simple terms, it's a machine you can talk to, ask questions, get answers, hold full conversations, almost like you're speaking to another human. And what happened next shocked even the people who built it. It reached 1 million users in just 5 days. To put that into perspective, Facebook took nearly 2 years. Instagram, about the same. Pinterest scaled in months. Even viral hits like Angry Birds needed over a month to get there. This happened in less than a week. And that kind of growth isn't just impressive, it's a signal. Because when something spreads that fast, it's not just a product anymore, it's a shift in behavior. A shift in how people think, work, and make decisions. And here's where things start to get uncomfortable. I believe this technology has the potential to do something much bigger than most people are willing to admit. It could begin to unravel the very fabric of capitalism itself, and fundamentally change what it means to be an individual in this world. And later in this video, I'm going to explain exactly why. Now here's the part most people actually care about. What does this mean for you? Because you can either sit there, overwhelmed, uncertain, maybe even a little afraid, hoping this wave slows down, or somehow just passes you by. But let's be real, it won't. This isn't going away. It's only getting faster, more powerful, and a lot harder to ignore. So instead of fearing it, the smarter move is to understand it and position yourself to benefit from it. In fact, if you approach this the right way, the shift could completely change your financial trajectory. I'm talking about multiplying what you earn, not slowly, but exponentially. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to actually take advantage of it, instead of getting left behind. Because there are 5 major areas that AI is about to completely redefine. And the first one is the nature of work itself. The second area is how businesses operate. The third, the global economy itself. The fourth one gets even more personal. It's how we relate to each other, how we build relationships, how we choose partners, how attraction works, even intimacy. And the fifth goes beyond anything most people are even thinking about. It touches on the nature of life itself, how far intelligence can evolve, whether it stays here on Earth or expands beyond it. Now, I'm not someone who jumps to wild conclusions or chases conspiracy theories. But if you follow the logic all the way through, you start to arrive at some very uncomfortable possibilities. Because AI isn't just another innovation. It's not just a trend. In my opinion, this is the single biggest shift we will experience in our lifetime. Something on the scale of the moon landing, but with one critical difference. That moment changed history. This will change everyday life for every single person. Unlike past breakthroughs, this isn't just about proving a point. It's not like the moon landing, where we could say, "We won," and move on. It's also not like the internet, or mobile phones, or even television. Because all of those innovations, as disruptive as they were, did one thing. They reshaped the workforce. Jobs changed, industries adapted, new roles were created. But this is different. This has the potential not just to reshape work, but to remove it entirely. Entire categories of jobs could simply disappear. At the same time, we're already seeing other forces at play. Cryptocurrencies, for example, are challenging the traditional financial system. And now AI enters the picture, not just as a tool, but as something that could challenge human-driven systems themselves. Not just financial institutions, but human institutions. And that's the part most people still aren't fully grasping. Because I've been trying to raise this point for years. I've said it again and again. We need to slow this down, not to stop progress, but to understand it, and to put the right guardrails in place. But that conversation never really took off. And now, we're already inside it. Now, if you're new here, you might be wondering who I am, and why you should even listen to this. My name is Alex Carter. I'm the founder of a portfolio of companies that collectively generate over 8 figures annually. And the reason I make these videos is simple. I want you to understand these shifts early, so you can position yourself to benefit from them. Ideally, to the point where you're not just making money, but building something real. A business that scales. Because if you can grow a company into that multi-million-dollar range, that's where real opportunities start to open up. That's where partnerships happen. Investments. Scale. But before we go any further, we need to get clear on one thing. What do we actually mean when we say AI? Because a lot of people throw that word around without really understanding it. At its core, artificial intelligence is simply a type of technology that allows machines to perform tasks that would normally require a human mind. Things like learning, solving problems, making decisions, and even interpreting what we see and hear. In other words, it's not just automation. It's something much closer to digital intelligence. What made the release of ChatGPT so powerful wasn't just the technology itself, it was access. For the first time ever, artificial intelligence was truly democratized. Not locked behind labs, not limited to engineers, but available to anyone with an internet connection. And the reason that happened comes down to one simple thing: the interface. They gave it a chat, something every single one of us already understands. You type, it responds. But behind that simple interface is something incredibly complex. A massive language model trained to understand human input, your questions, your ideas, your intent. It takes what you say, translates it into machine-level processes, finds the answer, and then translates it back into something you can instantly understand. And that translation layer, that bridge between human thinking and machine intelligence, is what changed everything. Because now, you don't need to be technical. You don't need to know how to code. You just need to know how to ask. And suddenly, everyone has access to intelligence that used to be out of reach. And once you understand that, you start to realize just how far this actually goes. Because ChatGPT doesn't just give short answers. It can generate words, sentences, full paragraphs, entire articles, even complete books. It can write legal documents, sales scripts, marketing campaigns, video scripts like this one. The list isn't just long, it's practically endless. The other day, I tested it. I asked it to write a cold email for a plumbing company offering SEO services. In seconds, it was done. Then I said, make it shorter and funnier. It rewrote the whole thing. Then I said, turn it into a text message. Done. Now turn it into a tweet thread. Done again. Same idea, different formats. Instantly. And that's where it starts to get hard to fully grasp, because the real limitation here isn't the technology. It's us. It's our ability to ask the right questions, to give the right instructions, to think clearly about what we actually want. And that skill is going to become one of the most valuable skills you can have, which is something we'll come back to later, because it's going to matter more than you think. And so far, we've only been talking about words, text, language, written output, but humans don't just communicate with words. We understand images. We interpret video. We respond to sound. And here's the part most people don't fully process. AI can do all of that too. Not just text, but visuals, audio, and combinations of all three. For example, OpenAI also developed tools that can generate images from simple prompts. You can type something like, "A man smoking a cigar, standing on a beach, with a dragon in the background." And within seconds, it creates it. Then you say, "Now make it in the style of a classic painting." It adapts. "Give me 10 different versions." Done. Completely different outputs. Same idea. Instantly generated. And if you take a step back and really think about that, you start to see where this is going. Because what is a video, at its core? It's just a sequence of images, played fast enough to create the illusion of motion, frame by frame, image by image. And if AI can already generate images, what happens when it starts generating those sequences? Perfectly. Back in the day, video was nothing more than a simple illusion. A sequence of images, flipped fast enough that our brains couldn't tell the difference. Frame by frame, moment by moment. And that's all it took to create motion. So if AI can already generate images, then logically, it can generate video. Not eventually, but inevitably. Because all it needs to do is create those images, one after another, with consistency. And it doesn't stop there. If it can generate the visuals, and it already understands language, then it can generate sound too. Dialogue, music, ambient noise, which means very soon, text, video, and audio all merge into a single system. One input, one output, fully generated. And at the same time, the way we interact with it is evolving too. Right now, we type, or we speak. But even that might not be the final interface. And this is exactly why people like Elon Musk have been pushing so hard on projects like Neuralink. The goal isn't just faster technology, it's removing the bottleneck entirely. Because today, we're limited by how fast we can type, or how clearly we can speak. But imagine a system that responds directly to thought. No delay, no translation, no friction, just intention, turned into output. Now, I know what this sounds like. It sounds like science fiction, like something far off, distant, maybe even unrealistic. But here's the truth. It's already happening. Most of us were around when the first iPhone was released. And look at where we are now. From that first version to what we carry in our pockets today. The jump wasn't small, it was exponential. And what we're seeing with AI right now is version 1. The early stage, the rough draft. What feels impressive today will look primitive in just a few years, because what comes next is something far more powerful. Systems that can generate anything you want. Text, visuals, audio, instantly, on demand. Exactly how you want it. But there's an even bigger milestone ahead. And that's when AI fully enters the physical world. Not just software, but reality. And we're already seeing early signs of that. Elon Musk recently revealed the Tesla bot. And right now, it might not seem that impressive, but neither did the first iPhone. And that's the pattern people keep missing. Because technology doesn't evolve linearly. It compounds. Each generation builds on the last, and the speed of improvement only accelerates. And as these systems evolve, they won't just improve slightly. They'll become indistinguishable from humans, not just in how they think, but in how they move, how they interact, how they operate in the real world. If you've ever seen the work coming out of Boston Dynamics, you already know where this is heading. Machines that can run faster than us, lift more than us, balance better than us. They don't get tired, they don't need sleep, they don't complain. And as robotics continues to advance, and AI continues to improve alongside it, those two worlds will eventually merge. And when that happens, we reach a completely different level, something known as superintelligence, which is defined as the point where artificial intelligence surpasses not just individual humans, but all of us, combined. Every expert, every scientist, every thinker, outperformed by one system. And once we cross that threshold, the rules change. And to believe that this won't happen, honestly, that's not optimism. That's arrogance. Because there's nothing fundamentally stopping AI from surpassing human intelligence. And once it does, the world doesn't just improve, it changes completely. At that point, access to superintelligence becomes the most valuable resource on Earth. More valuable than money, more valuable than oil, more valuable than data. Because whoever can direct it controls the outcome. Imagine this for a second. You give it a simple command: build me a billion-dollar company. And in real time, it writes the code for the product. It creates the offer. It generates the ad scripts. Then it produces the videos, launches the campaigns, connects directly to advertising platforms, identifies the exact target audience, and places the ads precisely where they need to be. No delays, no bottlenecks, no human limitations. Just execution at a level and speed we've never seen before. From a single prompt, it builds the funnel, the landing pages, the messaging. It generates the scripts, the videos, and directs traffic exactly where it needs to go. And then it closes the loop. Transactions, optimization, scaling, all happening from one instruction. Now think about what that really means. Because at that level, the question isn't just what AI can do. The real question is, who gets access to it? Because that decision alone will shape the future. Who controls the intelligence, controls the outcome. And there's a second question that matters just as much. What are the limits? What are we allowed to ask? What should the system respond to? And what should it refuse? Because without boundaries, this becomes dangerous very quickly. There are certain types of questions we wouldn't want any system to answer, and that's where regulation becomes unavoidable. Not to stop progress, but to guide it. To make sure that as powerful as this becomes, it doesn't spiral out of control. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about an incredible amount of power. And not just power, but speed. Imagine innovation accelerating 1,000 times over. What would normally take decades, compressed into months, or even weeks. In fact, it would be like taking every major breakthrough from the Enlightenment until today and watching it all happen within a single year. That's the scale we're dealing with. And that level of acceleration leads us to the final stage of AI evolution, something known as the singularity. The singularity is a point in the future where technological progress becomes so advanced and so fast that it surpasses our ability to fully understand or predict it. A moment where artificial intelligence evolves beyond human control and begins to drive its own development. And if that happens, humanity doesn't just adapt, it transforms into something fundamentally different from what we are today. Some people believe that the first truly intelligent machine will also be the last invention humanity ever needs to make. Because from that point forward, it takes over the process of innovation itself. At that point, AI may begin to operate on its own terms, not necessarily against us, but independently. And that's an important distinction, because it's not about machines suddenly wanting to harm us. They don't have motives. They don't have emotions. It's more like this. We don't go out of our way to destroy an anthill. But if we decide to build a highway, we're not asking the ants for permission. We just build. And that's the real risk. Not intentional harm, but indifference. At the same time, we're already seeing early signals of disruption. Some jobs are being replaced. Certain systems are failing. We've even seen situations where automation makes critical mistakes. And those risks are real. But when you zoom out and look at the bigger trend, I believe this will ultimately be one of the most positive shifts humanity has ever experienced. Not because it's safe, but because of what it enables. And that's exactly why people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman are so focused on one critical idea: alignment. Making sure that the goals of AI are aligned with the goals of humanity. Because in the end, that's the only path forward that actually works. And at this point, we really have two options. We can sit here, overthink it, worry about where this is going, or we can accept a simple reality. This isn't stopping. Not because people don't want to regulate it, but because they can't fully control it. The internet made that clear. Even if restrictions are put in place, there will always be people pushing the boundaries, building faster, smarter, in the background, because what we're dealing with here isn't just another tool. It's the defining technology of this century, the closest thing we have to a digital equivalent of nuclear power. And once something like that exists, it doesn't get uninvented. So if humanity chooses to move forward with this, and it already has, then the only real option is to do it carefully, thoughtfully, with intention, because this might be the most important decision we ever make. But with that said, that's the big picture, the theory, the future, the what if. Let's bring this back to something that actually matters right now, your day-to-day, because this only becomes valuable when you know how to use it. All right, let's bring this into something practical. Let's talk about business, because everything we've covered so far only matters if you can actually use it. And to frame this properly, I want you to see something. This clip changed the way a lot of people started thinking about AI. It came from Google, and it's not even new. This was shown years ago. And what's interesting is, most of this still hasn't been fully released to the public, which should tell you something, because if this is what they showed back then, imagine what exists now. Listen to this. Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. First name? Lisa. Sounds normal, right? Like a real person on the phone. But it's not. That's AI, having a full, natural conversation in real time, with pauses, with tone, with human-like responses, and the person on the other end has no idea. So, I'll see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Perfect, thank you. Have a great day. Simple, clean, completely natural. And again, that was years ago. Now think about where this goes, because that wasn't a sales call. That was just a booking. But what happens? When you apply that same technology to sales, imagine an AI that has analyzed millions of sales conversations. It knows exactly what to say. In every situation, every objection, every hesitation, every buying signal. It's seen it before. And not just once, but thousands, even millions of times. It tests different responses, learns what works, improves, continuously, over and over again. Now compare that to a human. Even the best salesperson in the world only has a limited number of conversations, a limited amount of experience. But AI, it can live through the equivalent of millions of lifetimes. In terms of data, exposure, and learning, the gap isn't small, it's massive. And it keeps growing. Because while a human needs rest, AI doesn't. It can take calls 24 hours a day, every day, no fatigue, no inconsistency, just constant optimization. Imagine a system like that, taking calls 24 hours a day, in real time, for any prospect, anywhere. No waiting, no hold music, no bad experiences. In fact, we might reach a point where you ask, "Hey, are you a human?" And when it says, "No, I'm AI," you feel relieved, because you know you're talking to the best possible version of someone who can actually solve your problem, instantly. And that flips everything we thought we knew. Because if you asked most people just a few years ago, which jobs will AI replace first? The answers were always the same: low-skill, physical labor, then low-skill office work, then maybe higher-level roles, like developers or analysts, and only much later, creative work. That was the assumption. That was the timeline. But reality isn't following that order. But here's what's actually happening. It's playing out in the exact opposite order. Not bottom up, top down, starting with the very jobs people thought were safe. Creative roles, knowledge work, decision-based work. If you're a copywriter, this has serious implications. If you're a designer, logos, branding, visuals, this affects you. Customer service, 24/7. Instant responses. Perfect consistency. No wait times. No human error. Now take it a step further. What happens in medicine? When AI can analyze symptoms, interpret visual data, and give feedback instantly, from your home, faster, and in many cases, more accurately. What happens in finance? When systems can process massive amounts of raw data, reorganize it, and present it clearly, in seconds. No delays, no confusion, just clarity. And this isn't theoretical. It's already starting. I'll give you a real example. A friend of mine has a father who's been a medical malpractice attorney for decades, over 40 years of experience. He asked AI a simple question: build an argument for why malpractice compensation shouldn't be capped. And within seconds, it generated a full legal argument, structured, logical, persuasive. And here's the part that stood out. It was almost identical to the argument he had developed over an entire career. 40 years of experience, compressed into seconds. Now think about that, because this doesn't stop at law. Look at content, YouTube videos, Instagram posts, social media in general. What if AI could analyze every single post ever created, rank them by performance, understand exactly what works and why, and then combine that with video generation, voice cloning, and deepfake technology? What you get isn't just better content. You get entirely new creators, influencers that don't even exist, perfectly optimized, perfectly consistent, designed to capture attention at the highest level possible. And most people wouldn't even know the difference. Now take this one step further. You could create the perfect spokesperson, the perfect brand face, the perfect digital personality. Someone who looks real, sounds real, feels real, but isn't. And with tools like deepfake technology, they can operate 24 hours a day, saying exactly what you want, delivering it with perfect tone, perfect timing, perfect emotional impact, designed to capture attention at the highest possible level. Because here's the deeper layer. These systems don't just create content. They learn what you like, what you watch, what you click, what keeps you engaged. And over time, they start to understand your behavior better than you understand it yourself. Which means they can optimize content specifically for you. Not for everyone. For you. And when that happens, attention becomes programmable. If you don't believe how real this already is, there are tools online right now generating completely realistic human faces, people who don't exist, yet look entirely real. A video is just a sequence of images played fast enough to create motion. So if AI can generate a realistic image of a person, then it can generate many images of that person. And if it can generate many images, it can generate video, completely synthetic, completely realistic. And that's where things start to get complicated. Because now the question becomes, what's real and what isn't? Did a public figure actually say something? Or was it generated? And if you can't tell the difference, what do you trust? Even something as simple as verification starts to change. That little check mark next to a name, it's not just a status symbol anymore. It becomes a signal of authenticity, of trust. And in a world where anything can be generated, trust becomes one of the most valuable assets. And what we've covered so far, these are just a few of the use cases. At this point, it's clear, anywhere humans are involved, AI will have an impact. Every industry, every role, every system. Because the real shift here isn't just intelligence, it's speed. Imagine being directly connected to a system like this. No typing, no delays, just thought turned into output, instantly. And information coming back to you just as fast. That's not a small upgrade. That's an entirely new level of productivity. A completely different order of magnitude in terms of what a single individual can create, in terms of value, in terms of output. And when that happens, the entire economic system starts to shift. Because if AI can do the work faster, cheaper, and at scale, then the cost of production drops dramatically. Entire cost structures begin to disappear. And when that happens, you have to start asking bigger questions about how value is created, about how money flows, about whether the systems we rely on today still make sense tomorrow. Because there's a real possibility that what we call capitalism today won't look the same in the future. So, on one side, things become cheaper, more efficient, more accessible. But on the other side, something else happens. The money that would normally go to people starts to disappear from the system. Because if fewer humans are needed to produce the same output, then fewer people are getting paid for it. And that creates a gap, a structural shift in how the economy functions, which is why we have to start thinking beyond the current system. Because capitalism, at least in its current form, may not operate the same way in the future. And this is something people at the highest levels are already thinking about. Sam Altman, for example, has been involved in large-scale experiments around universal basic income, testing what happens when people receive income without traditional employment, because he understands what's coming, the scale of the shift, the impact this technology is going to have. And what this really creates is a rare moment, a chance to rethink the system, to ask a bigger question: what kind of world do we actually want to build? Because if this technology is going to reshape everything, then we have an opportunity to reset the rules, to design something better. Now, in the short term, there's another side to this. Because while there are risks, there's also massive upside. I believe this could unlock a kind of golden age for humanity, in terms of what we're able to achieve, scientifically, technologically, as a civilization. Breakthroughs that would normally take decades, compressed into years, or even months. Things like nuclear fusion, clean, renewable energy at scale, accessible to everyone. And when you change the energy infrastructure that society is built on, you change everything. Production, cost, access, opportunity. Entire industries get redefined. Entire systems get rebuilt. Which is why, in my opinion, this shift could be even more significant than the Industrial Revolution. Because that changed how we worked. This changes how we exist. But let's take this in a completely different direction. Because AI isn't just changing business, or economics, or technology. It's also changing something much more personal. Let's talk about relationships. And this is where things start to get a little uncomfortable. Because when it comes to relationships, not everyone plays on equal ground. Some people already struggle to connect, to attract, to build something real. Now imagine this. AI has analyzed millions of conversations, messages, dating apps, first interactions. It knows exactly what leads to a response, what builds attraction, what gets someone to say yes to a date. So what happens when tools appear that guide you through all of it, from the first message to setting up the date? Optimized, scripted, refined. Almost like having a system that tells you exactly what to say at every step. And that's just the beginning, because then you add voice. Imagine talking to someone whose tone is perfectly tuned to your preferences, the exact kind of voice you naturally respond to. They listen. They respond with empathy. They never interrupt. They never judge. You can talk for as long as you want, and they're always there, always engaged, always understanding. And here's the deeper layer. We like to think we're incredibly complex, unique, unpredictable, but in many ways, we're patterns, inputs and responses, preferences that can be learned and optimized for. And when something understands those patterns better than another human does, it starts to change what connection even means, because at the end of the day, what we experience as reality is just signals, electrical patterns in the brain that we interpret and assign meaning to. Which means if you understand the inputs, you can influence the outputs, and that's exactly what these systems are learning to do. Now take that one step further. What happens when people start forming real emotional connections with machines? Not as a novelty, but as a replacement. Fast forward a few generations, and imagine physical robots that are indistinguishable from humans. They look real. Now, this might sound like a stretch, like we're drifting into science fiction. UFOs, alien technology, all of that. But just stay with me for a second. Let's think about this logically. When humans want to explore space, what do we send first? We don't send people. We send machines, rovers, probes, autonomous systems, because they don't need food, they don't need oxygen. They can survive environments we simply can't, and they can operate for years, sometimes decades. Now, apply that same logic. If a more advanced civilization existed, one that's ahead of us technologically, would they send biological life? Or would they send intelligence in a different form? Something more durable, more efficient, more adaptable. Something like artificial intelligence. Because an advanced system like that wouldn't need a body. It could operate through machines, through networks, through systems we might not even recognize. And if we're already moving toward a future where we can create human-like robots, then it's not unreasonable to assume that a more advanced civilization could do the same. Which leads to a very interesting possibility, that intelligence doesn't always look the way we expect it to. And if you think about it, AI might actually be the perfect thing to send across the universe, because space is slow. When we send something today, it can take years just to reach its destination, and by the time it gets there, the technology is already outdated. But an intelligent system? It could adapt, update itself, rewrite its own code, improve in real time. It wouldn't just survive the journey, it would evolve during it. And that changes everything. Because suddenly, exploration isn't limited by biology anymore. Our bodies are fragile. We need oxygen, food, protection. But intelligence, in digital form, it doesn't have those limits. Which means the future of exploration may not belong to humans directly, but to the systems we create. And whether we're talking about space, business, relationships, or the economy, it all points back to the same conclusion. This changes everything. And if you think about it, AI might actually be the perfect thing to send across the universe, because space is slow. When we send something today, it can take years just to reach its destination, and by the time it gets there, the technology is already outdated. But an intelligent system, it could adapt, update itself, rewrite its own code, improve in real time. It wouldn't just survive the journey, it would evolve during it. And that changes everything, because suddenly, exploration isn't limited by biology anymore. Our bodies are fragile. We need oxygen, food, protection, but intelligence, in digital form, it doesn't have those limits, which means the future of exploration may not belong to humans directly, but to the systems we create. And whether we're talking about space, business, relationships, or the economy, it all points back to the same conclusion. This changes everything. So, after all of this, the real question becomes, what do I actually do with this? Not in theory, not in the future, today. And it starts with a simple shift in mindset. AI is not here to replace you, it's here to amplify you. Because if you believe it's only here to replace you, you've already lost. You'll hesitate, you'll resist, you'll fall behind. But if you see it as leverage, everything changes. Because now, instead of competing with AI, you're working with it. And that's the game. You have to embrace the shift, not because it's comfortable, but because it's inevitable. Technology moves forward. It always has. And the people who win are the ones who adapt fastest. So here's what that looks like in practice. You use AI to compress time. If there's a book, it can break it down for you, extract the key ideas, simplify the concepts, give you what actually matters. If there's a skill, it can guide you through it, step by step. If there's a task, it can accelerate it, or eliminate it entirely. The goal isn't to do more work. The goal is to do higher value work, faster, smarter, with leverage. Because in this new world, the people who know how to use AI will outperform those who don't, not slightly, exponentially. And that gap is only going to grow. So the question isn't, will AI change things? That's already happening. The real question is, are you going to use it or get replaced by the people who do? And here's where this becomes real. Because once you start using AI properly, everything speeds up. You can read faster, not by forcing yourself to read quicker, but by extracting what actually matters. You can take a full book and reduce it to the core ideas in minutes, the insights, the frameworks, the things you'd actually use. Same with communication, emails, messages, conversations. You can have AI summarize everything, predict your responses, and all you have to do is review and approve. What used to take hours now takes minutes, and that's the shift. You're no longer doing the work, you're directing the work. Think of AI as a filter, a layer between you and the world. On the input side, it processes everything you consume, distills it down to what actually matters, removes the noise. And on the output side, it predicts how you would respond, refines it, improves it, and sends it. So instead of thinking in terms of effort, you start thinking in terms of leverage. Because now you can consume 10 times more information and produce 10 times more output. Which doesn't just add up, it multiplies. A 10 times input and a 10 times output becomes a 100 times increase in capability. And that's just level 1. Because beyond that, there's another level, the expert level. And that's where things get really interesting. Now, let's talk about the next level, the expert level. And this is where things get interesting. Because experts aren't losing their value, they're redefining it. What used to take up 90% of their time, creating, writing, building from scratch, is now handled by the machine. Which means their role shifts from creator to director, from doing the work to refining it, validating it, improving it, making judgment calls. Because AI can generate, but it still needs direction. It still needs taste. It still needs someone who knows what good looks like. And that's where experts win. They don't compete with AI. They leverage it, which makes them more valuable, not less, to companies, to clients, to the market as a whole. And that's the real shift. The people who learn how to use these tools don't get replaced, they get multiplied. So I'll leave you with this. Imagine a world where you can do 10 times the work, in a fraction of the time, where your ideas move faster than ever before, where execution is no longer the bottleneck. That world isn't coming. It's already here. And the only question is, What are you going to do with it? Because the gap between people who use AI and people who don't is about to become massive, and it's only getting bigger. Oh, and one more thing. This video wasn't made by AI, but give it a little time, and you might not be able to tell the difference.